everyone. Welcome back to the Woods Collab podcast. My name is Nikisha Woods, Mrs.
Mike Woods. Welcome back.
And we are here to talk today to continue our series around leadership basics, specifically around leading yourself. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people feel that if they don't want to be a leader, they're not trying to manage anyone, they want to get in and do their work and get out. Leadership is not their thing, not for them, that it will never be their thing, that they don't need to understand leadership concepts. But at the end of the day, you need to know how to hold your leader accountable and what you should be expecting from them, as well as how you can show up in a way that even if you never have a title of a leader, how are you leading yourself in these different environments? And so that's what we're going to talk about today under Leadership Basics, is how to lead yourself. But again, all of this is relevant no matter where you are in your stage and phase of your career, because you have to know what the expectation of leadership should be for your leader and for yourself. All right, so Mike, you want to go ahead and kick us off with leading yourself, and what does that actually look like, do you think?
Yeah, so there's a few steps in the journey. I agree with you. It's very important for us to all lead ourselves. And we could take this in work. We could take this outside of work. Anything that we're involved in, anything that we're doing, leading yourself is very critical to the success of your journey. And one of the first thing I'd say is to know your identity. Understand your identity, understand who you are, understand your role. So when it comes to leading yourself, so when no one else is around, when it's just you and your work or your goal or your objective, it's important to understand and have clarity on what that thing is that you're looking to accomplish. What type of timelines are expected of you? What timelines that you put on yourself? What's the quality of work that you expect of yourself? What's the quality of work that others may expect of you? All those things play a role in knowing who you are, knowing what you're responsible for, knowing your role so that you could then execute on those things.
I like that. So really just having awareness around what it is that you're setting yourself to accomplish and how you need to go forth in accomplishing that. And it should come internally or from the inside, and not necessarily from someone with the leader title telling you those things, but you having an awareness enough as far as what is in front of you and how to get to the finish line. And of course, you'll use your leader for guidance and if you have questions and for feedback and for collaboration. But at the end of the day, you got to have that internal pull that's going to pull you from point A to point B. And then the leader is just there with those guardrails.
Yeah, I agree. Because you'll also have someone that is you'll be held accountable. There's always someone to hold us accountable. It helps that much more. You can be that much more effective when we're doing our own self-inventory.
I like that. What else you got?
Let me ask you this. When it comes to you and your professional career, what type of inventory would you say you do on yourself?
Oh gosh. Well, I like to sit and reflect on how my days are going, how projects are going. When I get off a call, how did I show up in that meeting? Was I a little too abrupt? Did that joke land? I just like to know where I sit. And then I also like to get inventory from other people. So I do ask for a lot of feedback, ask people how things are going, because sometimes I might miss it, even though I think I'm being self-aware, and that intent doesn't match up with the impact. So my intent may have been that these were the goals that were accomplished on this call, or this is how the way that I explained something made people feel or provided clarity, but the impact is not that.
Right. Yeah, that's key. And that inventory, that's going to help you to catch things about yourself before others do. So, if you say, hey, I'm supposed to be here at a certain time, before someone else says something, ask yourself, are you there at a certain time? Or again, my role is based on accomplishing these things. Am I on pace to accomplish those things?
Yeah.
Looking at those things for ourselves, holding ourselves accountable, doing that self-inventory, that's going to help us to propel to the next step as far as what we're looking to accomplish.
Yeah. And then after that, I think once you have that self-awareness and you collect feedback from other people, it helps you to hold yourself accountable to the things that you say you're going to do. At the end of the day, we're all adults in the workplace. So, that accountability doesn't check itself at the door when you go from home to your workplace. You still have to have that same level of accountability. And I think that just taking those moments to, right those wrongs, apologize if you misstep, or just actively fixing the things that you can, controlling what you can, I think is key. What are your other thoughts about accountability?
Yeah, it's real, because just like in any area, none of us are perfect. I mean, none of us are perfect at work either. There's mistakes that gets made. Sometimes we do things. It could be an email. Sometimes I can't tell you how many times I might send an email out, look at it 5 times, and then I say,
yes,
"Yep, there's an error typo right there." And it's okay.
Yeah.
But it's like I could have maybe held myself accountable to execute on that in a different way.
For sure.
So as we all make mistakes and opportunities, just a way to say, hey, let me take a look back. Let me take a step back and see, is there anything that I could have done better in that moment, as far as something I was looking to execute on, or it could be how I communicated with someone.
Yeah, I think another thing about leading yourself and self-leadership is really just saying, okay, well, if I'm responsible for this thing, how do I take it from the beginning to the end, right? So what is the first step that I need to take? Who do I need to reach out to? How can I leverage the resources? And then quarterbacking that thing all the way through. I love when I use sports analogies, first of all. I don't know if that was right or not, but it felt right.
It's a right.
So you're making sure you're taking it from point A to point B. And then when you get stuck, then you phone a friend, right? You say, hey, leader, this is what I'm thinking. How do you feel it should move forward? Or not even your leader. It could be your peer. It could be your spouse. Because as you all know, Mike and I, we bounce ideas off each other. But it really helps you to start to think collaboratively. And then when you have to get the right people in the room, are you saying, let me get the right people in the room? It doesn't have to be, hey, leader, this is a problem. It should never just constantly be that the leader becomes your roadblock. But hey, leader, I see this problem. I have a meeting set up with these 3 people to talk about this problem so we can resolve it. I'll get you in a loop. Or would you like to be invited in this call? To me, that's self-leadership.
Yeah, agree. And that's also a part of being resourceful. So you may not have it's okay to, you definitely want to think about, how can I fix this thing? How can I offer a solution? May not have the tools in order to execute on the solution, but being resourceful. Let me pull in some other people who are stakeholders that can offer some insight, that can provide maybe their experience, their knowledge. It could be looking at the Woods Collab podcast. It could be finding another podcast on YouTube. It could be reading something out of a magazine, talking to anyone, finding any type of information, being very resourceful, utilizing resources that are around you. Or I might have to reach out to you and say, hey, do you have a connection about this particular thing that I'm dealing with? You might be like, yeah, I don't know about that. But you may know somebody that have the same experience. But it's so important as far as that, leading yourself to be resourceful as well. It helps for sure.
Okay. And then the last thing, and we're going to tie it to leader by title. So if you have a leadership title, but knowing how to talk to people, because you all know that we have a podcast on influencing and so forth. But at the end of the day, the way you communicate something, it doesn't matter whether or not you are communicating it to someone and it's their first day there, or they're part of the C-suite, most senior level leader at the organization. Knowing your audience and how to communicate your message is so important. And in order to know how to talk to people, you have to know your audience. You have to build those relationships. And you can literally say the same thing, but if you're not considering your body language, your tone, what that person's background or experiences are, then it could go completely over their head. And you can literally have someone just go off or disengage or not want to communicate with you past that moment if you don't take the time to think it out first. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree with that. And then you'll be in an opportunity where you're not going to know anything about that person. There's people that we deal with that you know a lot about, but you also have others that you may come across, you may have to interact with, and you don't know anything about that person or how they're wired.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important in leading yourself is to have that baseline of communication as far as talking to others, treating others as humans.
Yeah.
Treating and talking to others as professionals, being clear in your communication. It's okay to be kind in your communication. It's okay to be firm in communication, but it all ties back to coming across in a respectful fashion. Knowing, and like you mentioned, like knowing when to stay behind that line, because as you know, I can at times be sarcastic, but there's things I may say to you, I may not say that to others. There's things I may say to others, I may not say to you.
Me.
Well, let me tell you. But it's important to be aware and to know those things, and being self-aware, because it can come across, if you communicate with someone in, let's just say, a rude fashion. Now you're talking about, and we've talked about this before, now that might be a little bit of a hit on your brand. Yeah. And that's okay. That is okay. It's just, but as long as you are aware of the impact that has.
You got to dig yourself out of that one. Yeah,
true.
For sure.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, and I think too, like knowing your communication, we talked about reflecting and being self-aware, knowing your communication strengths and your communication weaknesses is important. Me personally, I'm not the type of person that might strike up a conversation with a stranger. I don't particularly like a lot of small talk, because I know that I might not join the virtual meeting 5 minutes early because I know there's a ton of small talk. But let me tell you, when I do small talk, I'm ready. I know the weather's a go, right? People love talking about weather in Michigan. I know that people like to talk about themselves, so asking questions about them. And if they've said something to you in the past about their child or their dog or something like that, remembering a key factor about them and then bringing that up. And so that for me helps the small talk feel more genuine and less like, what are we really talking about? And so knowing your communication strengths and weaknesses, I think, is huge.
Yeah, that's good. I think you nailed it right there. Because while you have to have that background of the dog's name, I'm communicating in the moment. Hey, how's it going? Good. Oh, it's good. Well, tell me why. What's good about it? Start that way. Yeah. But that might be my strength, is that I could improv the conversation.
Yeah. And for me, I'm thinking about, okay, we have 30 minutes for this meeting. It really should have been scheduled an hour. So let's get in there. So for me, I have to kind of like temper that a little bit. And then I know people need to warm up to a conversation. So I would definitely say that's one of the weaknesses for me. But you need to give me a weakness, because I gave a weakness.
I'll give you one. So one of my weaknesses is that I don't have any weaknesses.
Okay, yeah. So lack of self-awareness. How about that?
No, it could be at times knowing when to work at a faster pace. Okay. That could be something. It could be like knowing how to move at a faster pace depending on the situation. I think that's just, if my sister's watching, I think I wouldn't say that's genetics, but if I have a deadline, one of the things I've had to work on is that if I have until Friday to do it, you will be done on Tuesday. Me, I'm likely going to take it to Thursday or Friday. So that could be an opportunity to kind of open up my schedule a little bit different on how to run at a different pace there.
So if you were taking that back to communication, would you communicate if you had other people who were involved in this project or something that needed to be done by a certain date? How do you communicate that so that they're not like, they're like me and they're like, hey, what's up?
Well, that goes back to having that awareness because for one, and this is important, if a deadline is a certain date and it's important to meet the deadline, that's for one. I'm not saying miss the deadline, but if I feel the deadline is in jeopardy, by all means, I'm going to communicate the thing. Say, hey, heads up, here's the situation. Here's what I'm up against. Here's what we're doing about it. Here's the new deadline. Let's talk that through to see if there's any obstacles. It's not neglect in any fashion, but like you said, that communication is key along the way.
Yeah. And what's helpful for me too is mirroring communication. And if you think about like email or something like that, if I have someone who's straight to the point in an email, I'm going to be straight to the point in my response. If I have someone that's glorious morning, grand rising, right? Smiley face, explanation point, all of the, hope all is well, then I'm going to give them a little bit more of that back than I typically would give, because I am anti smiley face in an email. I just don't think it goes there. Like, I know Microsoft figured out how to make that happen. It just does not go in an email. So I will give you an explanation point, and if I'm truly happy about something, I will give a smiley face, like, you know, if it's like happy birthday or something. But I have found some very passive aggressive smiley faces in my life. So, but if someone needs a little bit of that in an email, then I'm going to give it back. And what I have found is that people will judge you if you do not. So if someone needs the fluff in the email and the good morning, and you forget to say good morning, you just say, Mike, I need this by next week. They're going to like get up, yell, scream. It's not going to be great. And that message sent, it's not going to be message received. They're going to reject it, right? But if you can mirror it, then people are more likely to feel like you're with them, because sometimes it's hard to pick up on tone and, you know, personality in email.
Yeah, if that's the type of energy, so I look at that a little bit different.
Okay.
If that's the type of energy you're on,
Okay.
like mirroring the language there, maybe it could help. But if it's like just not how you communicate, might just like, hey, you know what, the fluff I may cut. It depends on what it is.
Okay.
If it's like a high, let's say it's something that's higher risk, and you're up against we talked about that timeline. It's Friday. I just need the information, the whole bells and whistles. Hey, I need to know about this data right here.
Yeah.
So I would probably, it depends on the person you're interacting with and what you're up against.
And I think for you, knowing you naturally give the happy energy, enthusiasm in an email. So for you, your more stern or firm or to the point email might be less dry than mine. Like I literally start typing the message and then have to go back and remember to say good morning or hello.
Got it.
Like I'm literally like, did you hi explanation point. But I think you kind of like naturally, because you're an enthusiastic person anyway. Me, I can be very methodical and dry, so I have to kind of like dial it up a little bit, where for you I think it just, you know. And
then like you mentioned before, it all comes back to your brand, how you communicate. I communicate in a way that's different than yours. You communicate in a way that's different from theirs that are out there. But being aware of that brand, knowing very well, I could send hey, good morning, how are you? And sometimes I may do that. But if I'm going in a fluffy route, there's going to be some who may look at this and say, hey, this is a risky situation. Let's hold off on the fluff until Friday afternoon. But knowing your brand, being aware of how you're coming across as you communicate, all those different things.
And the situation. You brought up a good point about be sensitive to the situation at hand.
Exactly. Because you could have, let's say we have a client that reaches out and the client is like frustrated about something.
Mirror, not like just do it out there. Like if they're giving you happy energy, give it back. But if they're giving you some energy where they're concerned, mirror the concernness. Don't just be like, great, that's amazing and exciting that your lights got shut off.
Be aware, for sure.
All right. So when we think about all of this as we wrap up today, when you think about leading yourself, how important to you is it for people to understand how to lead themselves, and then think about how their leader should be showing up in these different spaces? Because if you don't, I mean, we have master's degrees in leadership. Not everyone has it, but we understand that there's a whole lot to leadership. It's not just, I did an amazing job at processing information, so now I should be a leader. There's like nuts and bolts to it. So how does being more aware of these leadership concepts really help empower people who are not leaders to hold their leaders accountable and really dig in and lean into what their expectations should be?
Yeah, so firsthand, I've seen them work. I've seen them work over the years. Leaning into it, it's a strategy. You could look at it as a strategy, and I think it's also a life skill that just helps us how
life
to
skill. I like that.
Yeah, it just helps us how to relate to people in general when it's all said and done. So like even if you strip away, education, if you strip away work experience, it all ties back to working with someone else. This I look back on sports teams I was on. You can say, okay, we may have had this equipment. So like my high school baseball team, we didn't have a ton of resources compared to other teams, but we had what we needed in order to gel and work together as a team. We had to communicate just like everybody else. And essentially, like you mentioned earlier, we talked about using those resources. We had to use our resources if it's if we had some type of insight on another player's style of defense or how they were at bat, we would say, hey, heads up, this person's going to hit the ball over there. We're sharing things, we're communicating, we're making ourselves aware, not waiting for our coach to tell us those things. So when you, to go back, when you strip away education, you strip away degrees, you strip away all those things, when it's all said and done, you're just working with other people.
Working with other people, yeah. And then when it comes to your leader, it's that sometimes we don't necessarily, we might have a feeling that something is off, or we need to think through, okay, well, this didn't feel right to me. Is this how a leader could be or should be? And it's just that question that you have. Maybe some of the things that we've talked about today will help you to have the conversation, right? To lean in a little bit more, to say, hey, with the communication that we're having between us, sometimes when you share information, I'm not sure that it matches or aligns with the intent of that. And so these are some things that I need when you're communicating with me, accountability and so forth. So I think it's very important for us to know what leaders should be striving for, so that as we are moving forward, then we can hold them accountable to those things.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so you want to go ahead and wrap us up today?
Yeah, so we talked about a few things. So we talked about leading yourself. So again, number one, it's important to identify your role, know who you are, know what is expected of you, and also so important to understand what you expect of yourself. We talked about doing that self-inventory. So don't worry about somebody else doing inventory. Do inventory on yourself. Like, hey, are you showing up on time? Are you taking care of your business? Are you meeting the goals that are expected of you yourself? Collect that inventory, collect that data so that you could use it in order to build on those strengths or work on those things that you need to work on. We talked about being accountable. Hold yourself accountable for sure. Be resourceful. There's some things that we may know, some things that we don't know, but better believe there's somebody that does know it, or there's some information or some material out there, some type of video, something where you can be resourceful in order to be better and accomplish what you're looking to accomplish. And also communication. It's so important to know how to talk to others, know how to talk to others verbally, know how to talk to others in an email. Communication is key. So those are a few things about leading yourself and communicating. And until next time, this is
Keisha Woods.
I'm Mike Woods, and we are the Woods Collab.